What kind of company lets their own drivers cry behind the wheel? Elias Rourke had built his life around fixing broken businesses. He bought this taxi company 8 years ago when it was on the verge of bankruptcy. Back then, it had only 3 locations. Today, it had 11 across the state, profitable, efficient. But lately, something wasn't sitting right. Customer complaints had spiked. Wait times were up, driver turnover was high, and the last report showed a dip in driver satisfaction. His district manager, Clive, brushed it off, said it was just the usual growing pains. Elias didn't like guessing, so he did what he hadn't done in years. He pulled on a faded hoodie, shaved his beard, wore thick glasses, and called himself Eli. He signed up through the company's third-party driver onboarding system, a system he hadn't personally touched since year 3. Because of the company's scale and the fact that most drivers were independent contractors, no one at the dispatch office recognized him. He was assigned to the Northfield location, one of the busiest hubs with over 60 active drivers. He'd never personally visited. The first day he sat in the main waiting area, clutching a cheap plastic coffee cup, listening. A woman behind the dispatch desk barked into a headset. "No, Brent, I don't care if your wife is in labor. Finish your shift or don't come back." Elias blinked. The room was quiet except for the soft tapping of keys and the occasional sigh from tired drivers. A man in his 40s with a limp and faded baseball cap sat beside him. "They're always like that," he muttered. "Dispatch doesn't care. As long as the car moves, you're disposable." Elias nodded. "You been here long?" 4 years. Name's Marcus." That day, Elias rode shotgun with Marcus during his shift, claiming he was a new trainee doing ride-alongs. Marcus didn't complain once. He held the door open for elderly riders. He kept the car clean. He even carried groceries for a woman in her 80s, all without expecting a tip. "What made you start driving?" Elias asked during a lull. "I used to be a mechanic. Back gave out. Driving was the only thing I could still do. Pays the rent, barely." They were quiet for a bit until the dispatch radio crackled. "Unit 27, what's your ETA?" Marcus clicked the mic. 5 minutes, heading down Main." A pause, then the voice came back cold. "That's too slow, Marcus. You always got an excuse. Maybe we should give your routes to someone who actually wants to work." Elias turned to look at him. "That normal?" Marcus's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "Every day. Doesn't matter what you say, they just decide how they feel about you. You speak up, they cut your roots." Elias watched as Marcus stayed silent the rest of the ride. Later that afternoon, they stopped back at dispatch. Elias noticed a younger driver, barely 20, approach the counter. "Hi, I was supposed to get the airport run today." The woman behind the desk rolled her eyes. "We gave that to someone else. You were late last week, remember?" "I wasn't late. I called in my mom. Not my problem. You want extra routes? Earn them." The kid stepped back, eyes wide. Elias had seen enough. He stayed for 3 more rides that day, watching, listening. Every interaction painted the same picture: drivers walked on eggshells. Dispatch had all the power. Before he left, Marcus turned to him. "You sure you want to do this job, Eli?" Elias hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know." He drove home that night with the radio off, his fingers tight on the wheel. He had always believed in systems. But this one was broken, and tomorrow he'd be riding with someone else. He needed to see how deep this went. The next morning, Elias sat behind the wheel of a late-model Camry with peeling decals and a rumbling idle. He was paired with a new driver named Jamila, a single mother in her 30s who worked the early shift to be home by the time her daughter returned from school. Unlike Marcus, Jamila didn't say much at first. She moved with a quiet efficiency, eyes scanning the route, double-checking every address. "You always this focused?" Elias asked as they pulled out of the depot lot. She glanced at him, then back at the road. "If I mess up one pickup, they dock my queue privileges for a week. Don't really have the room to daydream." Elias nodded, letting the silence settle. They picked up a fare 4 blocks out of Hospital Tech, heading to the morning shift, and dropped him off without incident. "Have you been here long?" 2 years, she said. "Long enough to know who gets the good routes and who gets forgotten." "Forgotten?" She tapped the GPS. "They say it's automated, but I've watched the same 3 guys get airport runs all week. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with local rides and barely clear $80 after gas." Elias didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched as she pulled into a gas station and inserted her own card into the pump. No fleet card? They say they're reviewing who qualifies, said I don't do enough volume yet. But you've been here 2 years. Jamila gave a tired laugh. Yeah, I gave up asking. They drove in silence for the next hour. Elias watched her tap the wheel every time a call came in, tension in her shoulders rising each time the voice on dispatch announced another route only for it to go to someone else. At one point, a call was misrouted and Jamila was sent to a location over 20 minutes away. When she radioed in to flag the mistake, the reply came with a bite. Maybe if you didn't take so long between rides, you'd get better assignments. I was already en route to another fare, she said, calm but firm. You're not the only driver out there. Move faster or move aside. Elias watched her grip the steering wheel. She didn't respond. Just turned off on the next exit and headed toward the address like nothing happened. Back at the depot around noon, Elias asked to use the restroom. The woman at the front desk different from the one yesterday, but just as clipped pointed without even looking up from her phone. As he walked past the break room, he caught sight of something through the open door. A whiteboard with names listed under 2 columns, priority and standard. Jamila's name was nowhere on it, neither was Marcus's. But there were several names under priority that he recognized from the dispatch calls drivers who consistently got the longer, more profitable routes. He took a photo with his phone, then slipped out before anyone noticed. Later that afternoon, he rode with a younger driver named Kyle, a fresh hire, barely out of college, who was full of energy but clearly overwhelmed. They told me I'd get support during the first 2 weeks, Kyle said, adjusting his mirror. But I've had to figure out everything on my own. Yesterday I missed a pickup downtown, and they threatened to suspend me. You just started. Doesn't matter. Said I should have known the traffic patterns better. I've lived here 6 days. Elias leaned back, watching the city pass by. Kyle's car was clean, but sparsely equipped. No phone mount, no printed company materials, just the bare minimum. Did they give you a starter kit or anything? Kyle shook his head. Nope. Said they were out. Their third fare was a woman in her 60s who struggled with mobility. Kyle jumped out to help her into the back seat, careful and patient. But when she asked if he could swing by the pharmacy just down the block before her final stop, he hesitated. I want to, he said quietly. But if we deviate from the route, they mark it as a delay. It affects our ranking. The woman, disappointed but understanding, nodded. No worries, dear. I'll figure something out. Elias said nothing, but inside, the tension was mounting. They returned to the depot just before shift change. Elias lingered near the side entrance, watching as dispatch staff laughed among themselves, occasionally glancing at a monitor showing active routes. One of them, a man in his late 30s with slicked back hair and a Bluetooth headset, was flipping through a stack of paper slips. That one's a cash job, give it to Reggie. He brings in tips, the man said. What about the new kid, Kyle? The man scoffed. He still looks like he's afraid of left turns. Let him run errands. Elias stepped around the corner and walked straight up to the front desk. Hey, he said, keeping his tone casual. Just wondering how routes get assigned. The woman barely looked up. System does it. I heard someone mention Reggie getting a cash job. She frowned. You knew? Just trying to understand how to get more rides. She leaned forward, her expression tightening. Look, if you want more rides, maybe don't ask so many questions. We've got plenty of drivers who just do the work. Elias nodded slowly. Right. As he turned to leave, he passed a man sitting near the vending machines, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to open a bottle of water. Elias paused. You all right? The man looked up, startled. Yeah, just long week. My blood pressure meds ran out. Haven't had time to refill. No breaks? They'll dock me if I miss too many pickups. I try to fit in food or a nap when I can. Elias sat down beside him. What's your name? Luis. You been here a while? 3 years. Used to love the job. But now it's like they don't even see us. Elias didn't say anything, just sat there, the low hum of the vending machine buzzing between them. He left 20 minutes later, walked to his car, and sat in the driver's seat with the door open. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lot. He had seen enough. That night, back in his apartment, Elias opened his laptop and pulled up internal logs. He cross-checked the names from the whiteboard with payout records. As expected, the priority drivers were earning double, sometimes triple, despite working fewer hours. He filtered for route reassignment patterns. The same names came up again and again: Reggie, Brent, Carl, all receiving high-yield fares, cash jobs, and airport runs. He opened the HR database. Several complaints had been quietly closed under lack of evidence. One from Jamila, another from Luis. Both dismissed within 24 hours of submission. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The system wasn't failing. It was being manipulated. He sent a calendar invite for a mandatory meeting the next morning with all regional dispatch leads and Clive, the district manager. Title: Review of Dispatch Practices, Immediate Attendance Required. Then he wrote 2 emails, one to HR, requesting a review of closed complaints, the other to legal, flagging potential discrimination and route assignments. He didn't sign them Eli. He signed them Elias Rourke, CEO. And this time, he wasn't going to wait for another report. Tomorrow, he'd walk in through the front door. Elias arrived at the Northfield hub just before dawn. This time, he didn't hide behind glasses or worn jackets. He walked in wearing a charcoal sport coat and a navy button-up. No visible logo, no entourage. The only thing that announced who he was came a few seconds later when the receptionist looked up from behind the desk and froze. "Mr. Rourke?" He nodded. "Where's Clive?" The woman scrambled to her feet, eyes darting toward the back hallway. "He's in the meeting room with dispatch. I know where it is." He didn't wait for a response. He passed the driver's lounge, where the morning shift was already trickling in, and continued down the hall to the glass-paneled room at the end. Inside, Clive sat at the head of the table, sipping coffee and gesturing to a printout he was holding. 4 dispatch supervisors sat around him. Reggie, the headset-wearing dispatcher Elias had seen cherry-picking jobs, leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Elias opened the door without knocking. The room fell silent. Clive stood. "Elias, wasn't expecting you." "Sit." Elias closed the door behind him. "No one leaves." Clive sat down slowly. Reggie shifted in his seat but said nothing. Elias pulled a folder from under his arm and placed it on the table. "This," he said, flipping it open, "is a full breakdown of route allocation over the last 90 days. I ran it against payout records, contractor complaints, and shift schedules. I also compared it to GPS logs and internal correspondence." He turned to Reggie. "You've been manually reassigning high-yield fares to a select group of drivers, 3 of whom are related to you, according to HR files." Reggie opened his mouth, but Elias held up a hand. "Don't. I have recordings. I have screenshots. I also have a list of complaints filed against you and your team for retaliation, intimidation, and verbal abuse. Every one of them dismissed within a day." Clive leaned forward. "Look, if something slipped through, we can review it. But micromanaging every dispatch decision. This isn't micromanaging. This is fixing a system you let rot." Elias's voice never rose, but the tension in the room thickened. "I spent the last 2 days on the ground. I rode with Marcus, Jamila, Kyle. I saw how your team talks about them. I saw how you treat people who don't fit your preferred mold." He turned sharply toward the woman seated across from Reggie. "Trina, you told a driver yesterday that if he didn't want to miss his wife's labor, he could find another job. That's accurate?" Trina looked down, face pale. "I didn't mean it like that." "You did, and you said it in front of 5 other people." Clive cleared his throat. "We've been under pressure to meet targets. There's been a lot of strain on the team." Elias cut him off. "Strain doesn't justify abuse or discrimination." He slid a second folder across the table. This one contains internal chat logs. A dispatcher referred to a driver as too foreign sounding for airport guests. Another message called a woman driver too emotional to handle long shifts. Both messages were sent on the company platforms during work hours. He looked at Clive, then at each supervisor. "You all saw it. None of you reported it." No one spoke. Even Reggie was staring at his hands now. Elias straightened. "Effective immediately, Reggie and Trina are terminated. You'll be escorted out after this meeting. Your access has already been revoked." Trina started to protest, but Elias didn't give her the space. "I don't want explanations. I want accountability. You had authority, and you used it to bully and exclude. There's no coming back from that." He turned to Clive. "You're on probation. You'll be removed from Northfield and reassigned to a compliance role for the next 3 months. You'll report directly to my office. If I see a single instance of retaliation or obstruction, you're gone." Clive's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Everyone else in this room," Elias continued, "will undergo a full review. We'll bring in an external firm to audit your practices. If you participated in or ignored misconduct, expect consequences." He paused, letting the weight of that settle. Then his voice shifted slightly. "We have drivers skipping medication because they're afraid of losing fares. We have single parents forced to choose between stability and punishment. And we have good, honest workers who believe they're invisible. That ends today." He walked to the door, then stopped. "Dispatch rotation will now be randomized and monitored. Priority lists are suspended until further notice. Drivers will receive a direct line to HR, bypassing local leads. And starting this afternoon, every driver will get a fuel stipend based on mileage, not dispatcher discretion." He opened the door. "I'll address the drivers myself." Out in the lounge, dozens of drivers had gathered. The noise had died down the moment he walked in. Some recognized him, most didn't. But silence held as he stepped forward, eyes scanning the crowd. "I'm Elias Rourke. I own this company." Heads turned, murmurs spread. A few stood up straighter. "I've been here the last few days. Not as a boss. As one of you, I saw what you deal with, how some of you are spoken to, how others are passed over. And I want you to hear this from me. It's not your fault." Jamila stood in the back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Marcus leaned against the wall, eyes narrowed. Kyle was near the vending machine, looking stunned. "We built this place on fairness, on hustle, on human dignity. Somewhere along the line, that got lost. That's on me. But I'm here to fix it." He stepped forward. "2 dispatchers have been fired. A third is under review. We're overhauling how routes are assigned, how complaints are handled, and how your performance is measured. You'll no longer be punished for asking questions. That culture ends now." Someone near the front, a woman with a notepad and a faded company badge, raised her hand. "What about the drivers who quit because of all this?" Elias met her eyes. "We'll contact every contractor who left in the last 12 months. They'll be offered rehire with a signing bonus. If they want to come back, the door's open." Another voice. "And fuel costs? We've been begging for help." "Effective today," Elias said. "Fuel stipends go out weekly, tied to mileage. No gatekeeping, no favoritism." There was a pause. Then Marcus stepped forward. "You really see all of it? Or is this just cleanup?" "I saw enough to know I failed you," Elias replied. "This isn't cleanup. This is us starting over." Jamila spoke next. "You going to disappear again after this?" "No," Elias said. "I'm setting up a driver advisory board. 5 of you will meet with me monthly. No managers, no filters. You'll help steer how we move forward." A beat of silence held. Then someone clapped. Another followed. Soon, the entire room was filled with the sound, raw, cautious, but real. Elias nodded once. "Let's earn this back, together." He stepped down, walked through the crowd, and out into the morning light. He had seen the cracks. Now he was rebuilding from within. 2 weeks after the confrontation at the Northfield hub, Elias returned, this time without a disguise, without press, and without a speech. He arrived just before the afternoon shift change, wearing the same coat from the meeting, sleeves rolled once. The building had a different feel now. Not quieter, just more alert. Not everyone trusted the change yet. That was fine. Trust wasn't something he expected to borrow. It had to be rebuilt. Inside, a new face sat behind the dispatch desk. Carla, a former operations lead from the central office who'd been reassigned to oversee Northfield's restructuring. She greeted each driver by name. Elias waited near the back and watched. When Jamila walked in, she paused at the threshold, her daughter trailing behind her with a worn backpack. Carla stood up and bent slightly to meet the girl's eye. "There's a quiet corner in the lounge with coloring books if you want it," she said gently. "Snacks too. Your mom's shift won't run long today." Jamila didn't glance at Elias. She just nodded and led her daughter inside without a word. He didn't expect gratitude. That wasn't the point. He stepped into the dispatch office and closed the door behind him. Carla looked up from the screens. "You said you dropped by this week." "I wanted to see it in motion," he said. She tapped the monitor. "We've got 6 new drivers onboarding, 3 returns from the callback list. They're shadowing veterans for a week before soloing. Routes are randomized with manual oversight, and we're cross-verifying with GPS logs every 48 hours. He nodded. "Complaints?" 2 flagged interactions, neither from dispatch. One was a rider issue, the other was a driver showing up late 3 times. He's in a coaching session today. He leaned forward. "Not retaliation?" "No, he asked for clarification himself. Said he'd rather fix it than lose the gig." Elias looked around the room. The whiteboard was gone. In its place was a digital screen, cycling live route data and wait times. No names, no rankings, just metrics. "Good," he said. Then he pointed to a second chair. "Mind if I sit?" Carla nodded. "Go ahead." They reviewed driver performance summaries, filtered by region, then by time of day. Carla had already flagged a pattern. Early morning shifts were still undersupported. Too few drivers willing to take pre-dawn routes, especially those with longer commutes. "We're working with HR to offer early bird incentives," she said. "Flat bonus for pickups before 7. But we've also found some of the older drivers prefer that window. Fewer traffic headaches. Make sure they get the choice, not the pressure. I want people opting in, not feeling cornered." Carla gave him a look. "You think I'd let that slide?" He let out a breath. "No, I don't." A knock on the glass broke the moment. Marcus stepped in, wearing a company jacket zipped halfway and holding 2 folded papers. "Got a sec?" Elias waved him in. "Just got the new schedule," Marcus said. "Looks fair. Appreciate that. But I wanted to ask about that advisory board you mentioned." "It's forming this Friday," Elias said. "You're on it if you want to be." "I do. I've got some ideas. Things that don't cost money, just require noticing." "Like what?" Marcus sat. "We've got drivers who don't speak English as a first language. They're good, they're respectful, but the GPS calls come in too fast. If we gave them a few pre-printed route cards or voice-translated alerts, they'd navigate smoother." Carla was already writing it down. "I'll run that upstairs," Elias said. "Bring it up again Friday." Marcus gave a small nod and stood. "I'll let you 2 finish." As he walked out, Elias turned back to Carla. "That's the kind of thing we've missed, not because it's hard, but because no one asked." Carla nodded. "We're asking now." Elias stepped out 20 minutes later and made his way down the side hall. Luis was sitting in the same spot near the vending machines, but this time he was eating a sandwich, not nursing a water bottle. He looked up and gave a cautious nod. "Luis." "Boss." "You doing okay?" "Better. Been getting steady routes. Took yesterday off for a doctor appointment, and nobody threatened to cut my hours." He paused. "That's new." Elias sat down beside him. "Small steps." Luis looked over. "You know, I didn't think you'd come back. I didn't think I'd have to." Luis studied him for a second. "You ever drive a full shift?" "Not yet." "Maybe you should." Elias stood. "I will." He walked out into the lot and paused beside a new driver who was loading a small suitcase into his trunk. The man looked up. "Need something?" "I just wanted to say welcome. I'm Elias." The driver blinked. "Like, the owner?" "Yeah." The man wiped his hand and extended it. "Name's Haroon, first day. You checking on us?" "Trying to." Haroon gave a slight grin. "Good. Some of us came from places where no one ever did." Elias stepped back and watched as Haroon pulled out of the lot. Inside, the hum of the building was steadier now. No tension, no forced smiles, just people doing the work. He circled around to the rear entrance where a laminated bulletin board had been installed outside the break room. On it were pinned driver shout-outs, photos of top-rated vehicles, and a rotating rider feedback of the week section. This week's note, written in careful penmanship, read, "Driver was kind, patient, and even helped my father out of the car. We felt safe. Thank you." Below, it was a name, Jamila. He didn't take a photo. He didn't need to. He left the building without telling anyone. No announcement, no inspection, just a quiet exit. Outside, a Camry pulled up beside him at the curb. The window rolled down. Carla leaned over from the passenger seat. "You walking?" "I needed the air." "You coming Friday?" "I'll be there early." She gave him a look. "Don't bring a speech, just listen." He nodded. "I plan to." The car pulled away. Elias stood for a moment longer, watching as a group of drivers filtered into the lot, some waving, some not. It didn't matter. They weren't invisible anymore. And neither was he.